Namaste, I am Nihar Garve and I welcome you all to this series of webinars. As the G20 leadership has been taken up by India in 2023, there are several working groups like Youth 20, Civil 20, Women's 20 are organizing the conferences and preparatory events in order to explore the various subjects that are of importance for human welfare. C20 is a working group consisting of civil organizations working for the betterment of the society in the various fields. There are 14 themes that are decided by this working group in which the non-governmental organizations will be participating. The theme of life, that is lifestyle for environment, is being led by Yoga. This theme explores the aspects of lifestyle
Recording
and
in
relates
progress.
to various topics like waste, education, art, etc. In this series of webinars, we will be exploring the sub-theme of waste and life under the Civil 20 working group. The Poonam Ecovision Foundation is coordinating this theme and has organized a main conference on 3rd and 4th June, where the experts and enthusiasts will gather to discuss various aspects of lifestyle and their relation to the topics like waste, education, and art. As a prelude to the conference, we have also organized a series of weekly webinars that delve into the different aspects of sustainability, waste, and lifestyle. The aim of these webinars provide viewers a comprehensive understanding of the concepts, future courses of action, and the innovation taking place in this subtheme. We are excited to promote and spread awareness about the importance of sustainable lifestyle that can help us achieve the better future for ourselves and our planet. During this webinar, we encourage you to ask questions and share your comments as long as they are linked to the topic at hand. We appreciate your presence and hope you enjoy the informative and engaging session. The topic of today's webinar is waste to energy, an alternative approach to waste management. Our speaker, Aditya is a seasoned professional with over an 18 years of experience in India and 13 years in Europe. He is highly knowledgeable in the development of energy markets for hydrogen produced from the advanced thermal treatment of solid fuels in the sustainable and environmentally friendly manner. Aditya is a Sherpa member of European Clean Hydrogen Alliance Roundtable on the hydrogen production and an advisory board of Net Zero Summit India. He actively contributes to European policy level measures to decarbonize hard to abate sectors with hydrogen and its derivative products. Additionally, Aditya is the president of Indian Business Chamber of Luxembourg, where he brings EU corporations together to play a proactive role in India. Aditya is a certified energy risk professional from Global Association of Risk Professionals, USA, and also has an MBA in finance. He is an associate member of ICMAI India and a fellow member of ICSI India. He is based in Luxembourg and has a deep commitment to sustainable development and energy transition. I welcome Aditya ji. Namaste Aditya ji. We can continue with the topic and can you please share the screen so we can start it?
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Namaste and my greetings to all, especially on Akshaya Tritiya Day today, which we are celebrating. So, I think the objective of the foundation quite inspiring. So, my congratulations to the entire team on this, and it's my pleasure to be part of this initiative and to contribute something a little bit. So, I welcome all the audience who have joined on the Sunday morning to this event, and I also convey my greetings from Luxembourg about this. So we are going to talk about today waste to hydrogen to X. X means from hydrogen we then can produce onto any material from green molecules and electrification. And we are going to look into the impact on climate around it and how CO2 emission could be minimal and can have a commercial value. Sure. So, as we may be knowing, many of us, that waste is a big challenge globally now, and whatever waste is produced from households, 60, 40 to 60% of that is non-recyclable. Means that it goes to dump site or landfill. Now, we also know that uh, 90% of the hydrogen currently, which is used by the industry for transport, energy, chemicals, whatever, it's produced in-house. It's captive consumption for captive production. So that means that the marketable traded hydrogen quantity volume is quite low, maybe because of the model which is also not being present, or the quality or the size. So all these factors which make it quite a captive oriented production, which is in a way is a limitation, and we'll talk about it later on. Now currently only 0.04 percentage of the global hydrogen what is needed is green. So we could see that this is a huge journey to be undertaken compared to the target which we have to meet to have a sustainable economies around the world and green, cleaner economies around the world. Um, if we take the example from India, this is the Bhalsawa landfill fire, which happened about 7 months ago. You could see that what this picture tells. The picture tells that the quantum of energy stored in waste. In addition, the picture also tells how much pollution or emissions can come out from a landfill or a dump site, and the huge impact it can have on the society. Now, so what we bring in is that, and this is what we come back to the basics. In the waste, the energy comes in because of the biomass material or the materials of biogenic origin, um, which are present. And what we see here is that the origins of that goes to photosynthesis, where the sunlight, photosynthesis uses sunlight and CO2 to crack the strong hydrogen-oxygen bond of water and produce the oxygen we breathe. The leftovers are stored as hydrocarbons in plant, and in the end make up most of our non-recyclable waste. So that's the key of hydrogen source. The hydrogen source we are looking at is coming out of the photosynthesis process, abundant in nature, and then containing into the various materials which get processed out into it, which is in a way paper. We already know about the food items, and we also know that plastics and all are the fossil fuels which have got some origin to the photosynthesis process, which has taken millions of years away. So that is the primary driver of energy or storage of energy here. Now, we make waste to energy model sustainable and environment friendly. So if we look at people living in a community on the left side of a screen, right, and we have taken the example of 100K people, and they produce maybe 1 kg of waste per day, that we can, for the time being, we can take that. So that turns around 100 tons per day of waste generated by 100K, 100,000 people, or we call it 1 लाख इंसान, उनसे हमें एक दिन में 100 tons की waste मिलती है. So we get 100 tons of waste from 100,000 people is basically. And that waste normally, if it goes for incineration, which is shown on the right hand side of the screen, then it can cause emission when you incinerate the waste for electricity generation or for the heat. So there is CO2 emission, and there is a toxic residue waste, which is around 20 to 25% of the waste volume. So every fourth or fifth day, you have got the volume of the waste you were trying to avoid on day one, because residue is 20 to 25%. So that builds up. So you have a problem which is there, just that it's delayed by 4 days, is what the incineration does. And then, of course, after that, we have got the electricity produced, then you send it back, which you can see the wires around here, and you could see on the left side again the charging station, and that charges the vehicles. So in a way, this electricity is better than the electricity which comes from coal, um, because of the lesser emission and because we are utilizing the waste at least to a certain extent. But this is not a sustainable long-term net zero solution. Something else is needed. So let's see what could be needed or what could be done. Now, the alternative model which came afterwards is to improve upon is to have solar power generated, the wind power generated in abundance, um, and then so much in abundance that 60 50 to 60 units kilowatt hours of solar power is diverted to split water to produce 1 kg of hydrogen. That is another model which came up, which has got a very less emission if we consider the overall life cycle of the solar PV production, or the wind farm, windmills carbon cycle, lifetime carbon cycle, then it is quite low. So it is in that way is quite impressive. But then there are a couple of other challenges which come with that, and we have to look into that whether that is sustainable or not. Um, Solar um, power requires a huge amount of land, so is that comparatively less by the wind mills which have to be produced, have to be set up, but they have to be set up often in a area which is considered to be um, geologically sensitive. And the other point is that so therefore environmental impact is there to certain degree, and that is being debated by the experts whether we should take that as significant or not. That's one aspect. The other aspect is that um, splitting the water after the power is produced, um, that requires water. So for every 1 kg of hydrogen, we need 9 liters of water to be split. Um, and that means that we are talking about, when we are talking about 500,000 tons of hydrogen production, which India has to achieve by 2030, we are also talking about multiplied by 9 to assess to look at the quantum of the water which we need, quantity of the water. In one estimate, this water may take up about one-fourth of the Amrit Sarovars, which we India is now creating in the across the districts. So you may be knowing that each under Prime Minister Modi's initiative, there are 75 Amrit Sarovars to be created in each of the districts, and there are about 600 plus districts. So each Amrit Sarovar, if we talk about, is the size of Olympic swimming pool, which is then 2,500 or 2.5 million liters of water, uh, that much of water in each, we will possibly end up consuming around 20,000 such Amrit Sarovars water to meet our hydrogen target in India. So therefore, it is not in that way sustainable. We have also to keep in mind that where the solar power is abundant, say in Rajasthan or some parts of Gujarat on the western side, there the water is scarce. And when we are talking about water, we are talking about the clean water which is needed for splitting. We cannot use the salted water or a gray water to do it. So in India, where there is already a water scarcity, and the first priority of water is over, for drinking purposes, it becomes a questionable issue whether we can afford to divert water, so much of water for splitting. Of course, some states are water abundant, so there the problem could be less, but they are not on the high priority states either to set up solar power panels or wind mills. So that is the point of the environment which has to be looked into, and which we avoid in the model which we are talking about. So we have got in the green circle below on the left side the model which we are talking about, 100K people producing waste that goes through B, which is our boson energy logo is shown there, and then we produce hydrogen that could be converted into electricity and that can drive the vehicles and therefore serving the people. So sort of a circle is being created. Basically, this model is small scale, bottom up approach, minimal emission and logistics, power infrastructure relief because we don't need the transmission and distribution um, structure in that way, and infrastructure relief overall because we don't have to rely on, say, transportation of waste to a long over a long distance or transportation of hydrogen, over a long distance from the production point to the consumption point. So let's look at the same model again, in terms of some numbers. The first example on the row here is talking about the centralized electrolysis, because electrolysis is economical only when there is a large area under solar power, right? Or there is a large group of wind power machines which are all put up, windmills which have been put up in one group, right? So that's a centralized, production site. And that electricity, if we talk about on the right-hand side, there is a hydrogen 5,000 tons. If the target is to produce that on the right-hand side, uh, then on the left-hand side, what uh, we need for electrolysis purpose to 50 gigawatt hours of electricity to achieve that. Um, looking at 50 units of electricity per kg of hydrogen. That is the commonly accepted number, how much it requires. But currently it actually is consuming more. 50 is therefore is a conservative estimate. Then we need about 50,000 square meters of cubic meters of water. If we talk in that way, we are talking about power storage system has to be there, right? So all that needs to be there. We split the water and we have say 5,000 tons of now hydrogen. Those hydrogens have to be transported to the consumption point, which is on the right hand side. So we need 10,000 tube trailers. Each can contain 500 kgs of hydrogen, right? Or 5,000 containers when we are talking about each can contain 1,000 kgs of hydrogen. It's a huge number. When these tube containers are trailers are moving around, there is a security or the hazard issue around it. There's a traffic on the road, and there are associated pollution which comes out from the trailer if they are running on the fossil fuel. So there is a question mark here that we should be aware of. Now, if we do on the mid row, if you look at the distributed electrolysis, if we try to do it, that is a smaller scale of solar PV and wind. Um, then and we then try to do it near the consumption center, right? Or maybe off, but then we need a power transmission line. And Power infrastructure is actually a very expensive proposition. Setting up the transmission line is quite expensive. If you look at the numbers, India has to meet its target of hydrogen production and then distributing this across India or to the consumption point. We are already looking into maybe a few billions, 50 billions euros or more equivalent. It's a huge number that India has to meet. If I convert that into a lakh crore, it could be we are talking about 4 lakh crore rupees that may be needed at the to start off to meet the infrastructure creation for transmission lines and then distribution lines, which India has to create for generating the additional power which needs to be produced uh, for hydrogen production. And if we convert and then that power we carry around up to the consumption point and split the water at the consumption point. So the row 2 or this row which is middle row is talking more about that we produce the electricity at the production point and then carry over this electricity over the transmission infrastructure up to the consumption point of the hydrogen and we split the water there and produce hydrogen there. So that option as well is in a way expensive and sustainable. And in a country like India, which is now becoming or has taken over China as the most populous country, we cannot afford or should not try to allocate so much of land for infrastructure, for transmission infrastructure purposes. So we need to be innovative there in saving the space. When we come to the third row at the bottom, that talks about our model. So here we are looking at 500,000 people um, producing around 500 kgs of waste every year per person, and from that waste, we are talking about waste. We pick up some, so that waste could be converted through our boson HPEG um, that is hydrogen from plasma assisted gasification process. The full form of HPEG is that is our proprietary technology. For using that technology, we can produce 5,000 tons of hydrogen in a clean way near to the consumption point. And we avoid the infrastructure for transmission, we avoid the infrastructure which is needed for transferring, transport of the hydrogen as you see on the top. So we avoid all those challenges which I have described in the top row and the middle row. So this is our model, which is a distributed model, which we talk about. Mm. Now, so how does it work? So let's look at it. So if we have to produce say hydrogen, which is on the left hand side of the screen, if you see that we have got the hydrogen produced and shown as a total 27 kgs of hydrogen, right? If we look at that how we have achieved 27 kgs, on the left side we have 17 kgs of hydrogen coming from windmill, and on the right we have got 10 kgs of hydrogen coming from 1 ton of waste. So if you look at the windmill, um, you know, so it is producing 1 megawatt hour of renewable power, right? Suppose that in 1 hour it produces that. And from 1 megawatt hour, when we convert it, use it for splitting water, then we get 17 kgs of hydrogen, not taking 60 units of electricity per kg of hydrogen. Then we are talking about 17 into 60 uh, kilowatt hour, and then we come to 17 as 1 megawatt hour of renewable power consumed, so 17 kg of hydrogen produced. So we have got that. If we take 1 ton of waste and we incinerate it, and after incineration, the power which comes, we use it for electrolysis purposes, then we have got 10 kg of hydrogen which comes out of it, taking that power into account. So both one So both together is giving us 27 kgs of hydrogen. And the cost of this will come to around or above 7 euros per kg of hydrogen. The cost of distribution of such hydrogen will be this. Now, if you look at our approach, where we call it the full sector coupling approach, where the same quantity of power is taken, so 1 MWh of power is taken, and then we take 1 ton of waste, non-recyclable waste, we put it through our gasification process, then what we get out of it is actually 100 kgs of hydrogen. And the levelized cost of distribution of the hydrogen is less than 4 euros. This is what the model which we have got. Now, so in this we have taken 1 MWh of renewable power which comes from windmill or solar, right? That is one option. So that we call it a full sector coupling, taking external power. Now we can also have another model called full autonomy model where we don't take external power. We just take waste. From that, we recover the power which we need, and then there is still we are able to give 50 kgs of hydrogen from 1 ton of waste. So what we are then talking about and a full autonomy, we are able to give 50%, 50 kgs of hydrogen to the society or to the economy to do it, compared to the full sector coupling, which was 100 kgs of hydrogen we are talking about. And in this case, then the levelized cost of hydrogen production and hydrogen dispensed becomes less than 3.5 euros per kg. If we convert that into rupees, so we are talking about 280 rupees per kg of hydrogen, right? Dispensed hydrogen. Um, okay, so we leave it there at this point of time. Now, if you look at the residue aspect of what it happens, so the waste get reduced to this much, which is 2% of the volume which you have seen. And density wise, it is a dense rock, which you can see on the right hand side. Um, it's a vitrified slag. It's quite inert, so it doesn't leach, doesn't cause any damage to environment, and this can actually have a commercial value. It could be used as aggregate purpose, or it could be when it's in a molten stage. It could be shaped in any tiles or any other form which would like to give a form to. And we are already talking to a few companies which are into this business to take this rock and put it to some commercial use. That way, we'll be completely residue free. So there is no emission to the environment, and there is no emission in terms of the stack, and no emission in terms of the residue material also to the environment. Now, so what we do? So what we do is that we gasify waste. And in the picture, what you see is the gasifiers, uh, which we have got it over here. So in this, the waste is fed from the top, and then it travels downwards. At the bottom, we have got plasma torches, and these plasma torches are covered with steam, and the superheated steam, it moves vertically upwards. In the process, it does what we achieve. So you could see from the top, the process is drying of the waste happens, then pyrolysis happens, then gasification happens as the waste is slowly moving down. It is going through these processes, and when it comes to the superheated below towards the superheated steam and the plasma torches, then we could see at that stage gasification happens, and below that, after that, the slag, which then when it comes further down, uh, it becomes a molten slag, and that gets vitrified later on, comes out as you see in the rock. So that's the process, the simplified way of the process. On the top right hand side, you can see there is a rich H2 and CO emission, syngas, which comes out, synthetic gas, which is rich in carbon monoxide and hydrogen, and that is from where the hydrogen is captured. We do steam methane reforming, SMR process with our partners, and we also do water gas shift to increase the quantity of the hydrogen which we can harness from this. So on the right hand side, what is being done, what is being shown is that if you take the same quantity of waste and you incinerate it, you'll get 10 kgs of waste of hydrogen, which we had also the number which we had taken in the previous example. When if we use the just pyrolysis process, it's 50 kg. Oxygen driven gasification process is 80 kgs, and plasma gasification, where plasma is the primary agent for gasification. Plasma torches is a high temperature that gives 80 kgs, but it's a highly electricity uh, consumption exercise, intensive exercise. And then comes to what we do, where we make steam the agent of heat transfer, carrying heat. At that stage, we call it boson energy HPAC, and the output there is 100 kgs. We are talking about on a conservative end, it can go to 120 kgs as we refine the process in future. But technically and theoretically, that waste can give up to 160 kgs of hydrogen when combined properly with the SMR and water gas, water steam gas, water gas shift. Sorry. So that is what the overall process in essence is. The next slide is quickly comparing our process with other plasma-based processes. So on all the processes, our process scores higher, and it just quickly I'll read it out. We have got a we can do multiple low rating plasma torches, can meet our job requirement. The other one on the right hand side needs high rating plasma torches, so therefore more electricity incentive. Minimum plasma torch exposure to high temperature, so our temperature remains around 1200 degrees centigrade, but on the right hand side the plasma torches have to go above that temperature and has to continuously stay at that level. Waste is supplied via airlock chambers to form a waste column, as you must have seen on the vertical thing here, and then slowly the waste goes down. On the right hand side, actually waste is dropped directly onto the surface of molten pool, and that is the reason that electricity consumption requirement is high. In our side, left side, syngas removed at low temperature and low pollutant loading. So our syngas is around at a low temperature, comparatively quite low. We are talking about 70, 80 degrees at which it is doing is getting removed. But in case of plasma torches, it's a very high temperature and therefore there is a heavy pollutant load which is there. Vitrified slag is tapped intermittently, is tapped continuously. Low specific energy consumption, we talked about it. High energy consumption. Off-gas cleaning is easy. That's difficult. Syngas with high caloric value, which I explained how they have got more cleaning syngas with low caloric value. And we stay within regulatory emission limit. They can also stay, but they need to spend some more money on the right hand side. Now, so we look at the model again. Suppose that this model, which I described, if we just look at in the perspective of a busy city, so you could see that we can collect the waste and then in a nearby locality set up a very clean plant which doesn't cause pollution to the environment. It is also smell free. And then we produce the hydrogen there that is used for the charging of local buses and cars. So that's the model. And on the right hand side, it shows that one waste to hydrogen plant of ours typically. Uh, no, how many it can cater to 20 buses, 150 cars, 150 utility light-duty trucks. So normally the pickup trucks, which we are talking about, say, will do 150 kilometers of round per day, and then 5 megawatt hour of peak load can also it can give to the grid, and then there are 5 to 8 megawatt of heating or cooling purposes megawatt hour of thermal heat or cooling could be made available, and then in addition we are talking about 10 cubic meters of clean water availability. So this is completely sustainable. Now this is the plant typically looks like, and this is where the units are fitted in. Mm. We are talking about the footprint of that could be around 6,000 square meters, so which is 1.5 acres if we talk about it, this plant footprint. And over time it could be compressed. It also is dependent if we need less area to store waste, it is already processed and sorted somewhere, then the footprint can become easier. And we have taken here the flat surface approach. The plant, there is some possibilities of planning of stacking it up, going a bit underground and trying to save the space. But that engineering, um, flexibility could be applied depending on what the requirements of the client is, customer is. So I talked about Imbi Rock, and that you can see on the left hand side, and I talked about that it has got commercial value as aggregate, but it has actually more, uh, more of commercial value. It could be converted into cell glass, right? Cell glass is a material which is fast becoming quite popular um, as a replacement for concrete. Um, it is it's a it's a glass, very simply speaking, glass mixed with CO2 bubbles. So this becomes a very porous material it creates, um, which is quite strong, sturdy. It can take load like concrete. It is that strong. So it could also be used for heat insulation. So could be put on the rooftops where you need a light weight material, and it could be the foundation for factory structures. The advantage is that when one has to remove it, it could easily be broken with a hammer or so. So it is in a way brittle, so it could be broken and then taken away. But when it is unbroken, then it's very strong like concrete and take it. So it's the advantage of all the advantage of concrete without having its disadvantages of high weight and difficult to remove. Mm. So you could see some of the shapes and the types of what the foam glass is on the picture on the middle, and you could see that there is a building on the right hand side in Luxembourg, quite close to where I am now and giving this presentation, about 200 meters from here as the crow flies, where this building is here from European Court of Justice, the Secretariat building, part of European Commission. There they have used a foam glass on the roof to keep the building insulated. Now, there is one more byproduct. When you have a syngas has got carbon monoxide, hydrogen, and when it's processed, and some other gases as well, those residue gases are recycled back in the gasification process as continuously. So those are not emitted to the environment, just to let you know. So CO2 part, when we are going through SMR and water gas shift, then CO2 is generated. Right. Our objective is to capture that CO2 as commercial CO2 and put it to use. And you could see that farming, greenhouse, hub is what we are calling about. There, that CO2 could be put to quite a good use, and that is being separately developed. That option is being developed, and that option is being also put on the table with decision makers when we are discussing the projects. Now, so what are the revenue drivers which normally go into this in the the cost, the levelized cost of hydrogen um, dispense, which I mentioned about, was less than 3.5 euros per kg, which I mentioned. Mm, right. But on this, what happened? That number can still go lower if you look at the options which are available on the left hand side. Those number can go lower if the gate fee which is being offered um, is increased. Now, you may be knowing that in countries like Europe, or in places like Europe, States, USA, or from some other developed economies of the world, there when the waste is being produced, is brought to the dump site, then for dumping they have to pay a levy or a fee, or called a gate fee. So that could be, that is typically 70 to 80 euros per ton, but it's increasing, going up to 100 euros per ton. In India, that is currently not there, or it is a very minimal amount. But at one point of time, when the government become more sensitive and they want to encourage people to produce less waste, then they will start putting in, and they are putting, a scientific landfill in. Currently, they come in and put it on the dump site, and it just stays openly like that. That is not possible in Europe. So these go in a scientific dump site. They are properly being put into the landfill and closed. There is a quite a expensive process around storing those waste underground, called we call landfill. So therefore, that cost is recovered, plus more cost is recovered from the one who brings the waste in. Therefore, there is disincentive is created. So that is a good source of revenue. Then IMBI rock, as I talked about, that could be a good source of revenue. The thickness of the line shows that how much we have considered currently as the revenue source. Then carbon which is emitted has got a emission trading scheme of European Commission Union, where this has a value, and this value of this carbon per ton is moving around between 60 euros per ton to 80 euros, and coming closer to now 80 euros per ton of CO2 emitted. So that again, our CO2 can bring us, because we help others avoid CO2, and because of this trading scheme, we can take this revenue in our calculations, and we could directly also sell the rest of the CO2, and there is a revenue cycle there. So, and then the output which comes out on the right hand side, as we are showing, is could be used for speed charging. Mostly that's what we prefer. So we convert the hydrogen into um, electricity and use it for fast charging of the electrical vehicles. Then we could be direct cells of H2, and there could be used, some part of the hydrogen could be used for grid stability purposes, because grid stability cells bring in high amount of revenue. You need a good, some very urgent basis, some power, and that power is needed for grid stability. So those who need this power are willing to pay very high prices. You may be knowing it already. So this is the impression of one of our plants planned to come up in the Nordics region. This is the artistic impression of what the plant will look like. Now, so we come to India case study. In India, we are supporting Clean Ganga initiative, and we see as a very important initiative what is going on. We are associated for last few years, and we are quite impressed with the progress which has been achieved. We have also been invited to set up a plant, waste to hydrogen. So the waste which otherwise escapes through heavy rains or from land into rivers, is that waste which is there on the dump site. If we start collecting more of that, and therefore reduce the possibility of that waste getting washed down into rivers, that is a plus. Then the rivers will be less polluted, and there will be less money spent to collect those waste from the river, because it becomes quite more challenging to collect the waste once it gets mixed with the water. So that's what is our plan, is to use that for producing hydrogen. As you may see that what benefits it can bring in. So typically we are talking about if we look at Ganga Mission, no, no, sorry, Ganga Yamuna Basin, and if we focus on the Mission Life movement, which Prime Minister Modi launched, a few months ago, and so that lifestyle for environment is achievable through the model which we have talked about. And we have shown some numbers on the left hand side. And we are talking about the green dots there. You're looking at the clusters of, um, the units which will put up in the cities around the rivers, and which will cover River Ganges and all the tributaries which are around there. Mm. Now, if you look at the total India-wise, right? If you look at the big cities, they produce 60 million tons of waste every year. Out of that, about 30 million tons of waste that goes to the dump site, landfill. If you look at that number only, that um, has the potential of 4 million tons of hydrogen that it can give to India. So India is targeting to have 500,000 ton of hydrogen by 2030 produced. And we are talking about the waste if we look at it and we think that everything goes right. We overcome all the challenges which may be there. We know there are a lot of ifs and buts, but assume that those are being taken care of, then India's waste itself is is capable of giving India close to 8 times more than the target which it has got for 2030. So keeping that vision in mind, the decision makers in India can progress. And if you look at the growth of population and in India and the way the per capita consumption is going up of the materials, therefore household waste generated is going up because of the creation which is happening. We could see that there is a potential to generate 50 to 20 million tons of hydrogen in the by 2040. So this model I have explained that, but very quickly I'll say that on the left side there is a centralized last mile model of incinerating the waste. Uh, so that has got its disadvantages. On the right side, I have talked about here is the distributed model and the associated benefit with it. Now the model is again explained. So we have got three gasifiers on the left hand side, and that then we are talking about again 5,000 kgs of local hydrogen, which is 5 tons of hydrogen if we are generating from every day from 100 tons of waste on the waste per day. Then this is how it will look like. We can you replace on the right hand side, you can say 25,000 liters of diesel every day. We can help save it, and that could also go towards saving, going for Prime Minister Modi's aim of making India completely energy independent by 2047. So no more of fossil fuel imports by 2047 is achievable. If we look at just 100 tons of waste, the potential it creates is for replacing diesel. So this can, if we just slightly elaborate it further, it can help set up the foundation of hydrogen economy in India. It has a multifaceted impact. There could be electrification support happening, um, decarbonization, energy security, and everything. Why electrification? We have to understand that India's per capita electricity consumption is one third of the global average. So India has a long way to go from one third to reach to the global average. It is currently one third. So India cannot afford to say that we have excess electricity production, renewable electricity production, and let's use it for electrolysis purposes. That electricity purpose is first needed for lifting up the living of a standard of people. The people who are consuming very low electricity, they need to come at par with the global level first. And thereafter, when India will have a surplus electricity, which possibly will take another 20 years, then truly speaking, there could be surplus electricity available, which could be diverted for electrolysis purpose. If we talk about the just and equitable transition from that perspective. So our India plan, includes adapting our cost, capex and opex, um, to local conditions. Standardization of to make in India at a scale, 70% of plant value or maybe 80% sourced in India, and support the government of India hydrogen of five. Sorry. I think what I like to do is that I have mentioned about 500,000 tons of hydrogen production aim. That was the immediate aim. By 2030, the aim is 5 million tons of hydrogen. So I stand corrected on that. So 5 million tons of hydrogen production by 2030. For the challenges, then let's look at the entire ecosystem. Right. The first is that the feedstock, which is the waste, has to be available, so that we have to work with local partners who are collecting the waste. Then the waste needs to be sorted to a certain extent where all the recyclable materials which has got a market value like glass, metals, papers which could be recycled, or plastics which could be recycled could be taken out. Um, the electronics waste which has recycled value could be taken out. So then again we need a agency which will do that in the part of the ecosystem. Then that feedstock is put it in our system so that we will take care of it. So biggest challenge in India is on the feedstock front. Because normally, if we look at in India before, waste to energy initiatives have taken, have been tried over last 30 years, number of times, a lot of projects have been set up. But what was going wrong in those, if you look back in this, the waste was taken from the roadside. So it was like quite a weighty waste, which has got a moisture content up to 60%. It has got a lot of construction and demolition materials in this, then that is being taken and that is being tried to incinerate. And so one is that quite weighty, so it takes a lot of energy there. And secondly is that construction and demolition waste is there. So that is a deterrent, and this process used to fail. And they used to then add up some extra materials, RDF and all to make it happen, but that was not. So we have to look at now that India has embarked on the journey of a wet waste is separate and the dry waste is separate. We will need the dry waste, which we know has got a good component of wet waste as well, which is good. Around 20 to 20% to 25%. We know wet waste also comes in the dry waste, which is good for our process. So we take that in. After the recyclable materials are taken out, it could be put it in. So if that challenge is handled around the feedstock front, I think the rest of the challenge is manageable because there are global and local players available in India which can provide technology for the rest of the component, and we are working with all of them. So I hope in brief this gives the answer.
Yes, yes. There was another question that was linked to it. It was specifically about segregation and all the terms you mentioned. What kind of a role policies and regulations can play in helping the implementation of this kind of technology?
Yeah, I think that's the most important part there currently actually. So what we look at that globally, there is a big perception that hydrogen needs to be produced by splitting water, right? And that perception needs to be corrected for two reasons. One, when you take 60 units of electricity and split water, then you get 1 kg of hydrogen. When you convert this hydrogen again into electricity, then you are getting, say, 20 units of electricity. So the 60 unit of electricity which you had has become the 20 kg of 20 units of electricity, which is being used for charging. This is what this is what the model on which the world is now progressing or wanting to progress on. As you can already see that there is 30% efficiency here, 33%. So 60 units is becoming 20 units. So that's okay, but that's not very smart. So the decision makers need to also see that what can we do where, and this is also basically electricity storage solution. You are storing the 60 unit which you don't need today, which you call it that it is excess for me. I cannot use it for living purposes of human beings. So it is so excess that I use it to split water. And then I store it by way of hydrogen. And when I need it, then I convert it into electricity. So this is a electricity storage solution, not the hydrogen production solution. As we have to understand, this is very important point first. Secondly, when the governments are making the policies, they are giving a lot more important and allocating budget for electrolysis route. They are not parallelly talking about or including in their policy documents the equal level of weightage about biomass or waste or how to harness energy from them or hydrogen from that. There is a minuscule mention of that. If you look at the India's hydrogen, strategy and the policy document, at least it's good that it has mentioned biomass in that. It's good that it has mentioned technology neutral. But when you see the proportion of the text allocated and the specific plants and points given about electrolysis approach, it discusses on a line items about the other technologies or a bit for biomass. Or for waste, there is no mention at all in the currently. So that word needs to also put in it. So policymakers, therefore, they need to look into it. If they believe that the technology is not currently available to that extent, efforts should be made, as efforts are being made to reduce the cost of solar PV. As the cost is made to reduce, efforts are being made to reduce hydrogen-related other infrastructure items. Efforts should be made to make this also viable and this technology to take off. So therefore, that could be done only through the policy, making appropriate policy making. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I guess we should conclude the session. We are out of time. And thank you, Aditya ji. It was a great pleasure to host you. And I can say that from our viewer side as well, that we got to learn something very interesting. Thank you for your insight.
Thank you very much to all of you for the foundation for the great work it's doing. Possibly our path will cross sometime. I keep on visiting India and especially Pune, so we could meet and discuss a few things more around that. And thank you very much to your audience for being there on Sunday morning. So I wish them all of them a good afternoon. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Bye.
Yeah, I guess we done with the live as well, I think. Yes. Okay.
Mhm. So very good.
Yes, it's actually excellent. No issues. We were able to see it quite well. We will just
Okay, the sound lagging and thing was sound was okay.
there was a latency in between, but there is not so much of an issue.
Latest.
It happens most
Okay,
of the time,
okay,
but that's okay. Yeah, we would be able to edit it certain parts
that's
and
good.
upload
Thank you.
it at the end. No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, thank you very much for organizing this and it will stay in touch. To say thank you, Raji. Thank you to all of you. Bye.